folks, welcome to Economic Observations. Today is Sunday, May 1st. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Chris, and this video is brought to you by the Tanzania School Foundation, a nonprofit near and dear to my heart. If you wouldn't mind hitting the like button and subscribing to this channel, I would greatly appreciate it. What is the illusionary truth effect? That if you hear something long enough or repeated over and over again, you start to believe it. Whether it be an advertisement, it be the media, or it be some of us people on YouTube. What is the truth? And we're going to try and get to it. And what is everyone talking about? You know, I've just read 100 articles about the housing market from the media saying that, sure, foreclosures are up. There are some states and cities that are seeing a very high amount. And that, oh, don't worry, it's no problem. The real estate market is still strong. And then you hear people with their own opinions on YouTube saying, well, wait a second. The housing market is seeing a higher amount of foreclosures, and it is not so good for the economy. They all got their arguments, and we're gonna narrow them down, and I'm gonna tell you which way I think it's gonna go. But it's very interesting. And I feel like the media tells us, and they repeat it over and over, what they want us to believe. The illusionary truth effect. You know, museums do this, and art galleries. There was a recent event for Van Gogh. It's an illusionary Van Gogh, and it is traveling all over the country. Well, they are featuring in their gift shop Starry Night and paintings of sunflowers. And you might hate them when you first walk into the museum. But you see them over and over and over again, and by the time you leave the museum, well, you kind of like them. It's the same thing like hearing a song on the radio for the first time. You say, I don't like this song. But after you hear it 30 times, well, it kind of grows on you and you accept it, and then all of a sudden you're dancing to it. The same thing happens with the media or a newspaper or an article or whatever it may be. You hear it long enough. You hear what they want you to believe, and you start believing it. The illusionary truth effect. So why am I talking about this? Well, there are hundreds of articles that say, sure, foreclosures are up and it's just playing catch up from the past 18 months. The interest rates really have nothing to do with anything, even though the Fed is raising them, and people borrowing $500,000 now have to pay $600 more a month on that same mortgage. Well, nothing's going to happen. It's normal, and there are still people out there buying homes, and there's still a shortage. That's what they want you to believe. It was just like Jim Cramer saying everything was fine in 2008, right before the housing market crashed. They wanted you to believe that. They don't want to scare us. But you have to come up with your own conclusions, and you have to decide which way you think things are going to go. Are you going to believe something you hear and read from the media over and over again to make you feel more confident in buying that house or that new car or even gambling in the stock market? Look at the stock market was down over 980 points on Friday. Dow futures are pretty much flat right now, but that has no effect of what's really going to happen tomorrow because no one really knows. Amazon lost $14 billion in a day. Sure, Amazon is still the go-to when people need to buy something. They don't want to go into the stores, and it's easy and convenient, and it gets dropped off right at your doorstep. But people aren't buying as much as they used to, and that's why they're down $14 billion. That just shows you how much money people spent over the past year and a half online, and that is waning. And as more people spend money on experiences and travel and hotel rooms or wherever they're going, concerts, they're not buying the goods and services that they once did. And that's going to happen all around. GDP was down for the first time, 1.4%. They say we're in a recession when GDP drops for 2 consecutive quarters. We already have quarter one. It will be interesting to see what happens when the GDP numbers come out in July. But let's talk about housing. There was a forbearance on mortgages for a year and a half. Foreclosures were down, way down. Many of those people that were in forbearance renegotiated, went into these balloon mortgages for 40 years, or they were able to catch up and pay. But there were many who couldn't. So it's been 8 months since that countrywide moratorium ended. Last month, 33,333 properties across the United States faced foreclosure. That is a 181% increase from March of 2021, which makes total sense. And it's a 29% increase since February. But now that there are more and more foreclosures coming on the market, what does that mean for the housing market? Sure, it has to catch up. It has to catch up for 18 months. So all of a sudden we are going to have increases every month of foreclosures, and that's going to bring up availability in many cities and municipalities all across the country. So it's the supply and demand thing, right? They said the price of houses went up because interest rates were low and there was not a lot of inventory. Well, what happens when inventory starts coming on the market? Are people still going to buy these houses even though the Fed and Jerome Powell keep saying that they are going to raise interest rates? Well, I don't see how they can. First of all, many of those homes that were bought in 2021 went to high net worth individuals and companies. Hedge funds and investors ate up all of the real estate because the money was cheap. It wasn't going to millennials. There wasn't a high demand for houses to be lived in by the owner. And that's scary number one, right? That's a warning number one. It's not about people wanting to live in the houses. It was about opportunities to put your money in something when interest rates were low. So what happens now? So many houses in the South, in Texas and Florida, they were bought up by these investment companies. And now some of them are trying to change their HOH rules so they can't rent them as soon as they buy them. Or that they must be owner-occupied. They don't want them rented to bring the value of the houses down because we know that renters don't take care of houses like owners do. So there are some stop gates that are trying to be enforced to prevent renters from going into these investment properties. But let's say the interest rates are high. We are not going to see the amount of investors and second home buyers as we did when there was cheap money. So when you take those investors and second home buyers out of the equation and just leave it to the natural flow of 25 to 42-year-olds, which are the average age of when people buy their first home, there's going to be more inventory than buyers. And people who bought their second homes or investors who bought homes with cheap money are not going to be investing in the housing market anymore. There are over 1 million permits for houses to be built that should be finished by the end of this year. You add those homes with natural people just selling their homes, plus you add foreclosures, and what are you going to get? You're going to get a surplus of houses on the market. And where are the foreclosures happening? Well, in California, it leads the way. Texas and Florida, number 2 and 3. Illinois and Ohio, that's where foreclosures are up. And there are foreclosures that are really high in certain cities. Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, LA, and Houston. So you have those cities, but those other states would have the highest amount of foreclosures. Now let's talk about the rents and apartments and eviction moratoriums. Well, they all ended, and now evictions are on the rise too. I think that the rents went up so high. Well, first of all, people were buying these houses at so much more money, but also the rental units where there's a natural flow of evictions, meaning there's more apartments available when evictions take place, that was subdued because of the moratoriums and people weren't being evicted. But now evictions are on the rise too. And that's going to lead more and more rental properties to be out on the market. And I think that the price of rent is going to come down too. It's a wait and see, but we saw that Amazon lost $14 billion, and you don't think that that's going to be followed by layoffs? There is so much money being lost in the stock market, and money that was just on paper. It was just a valuation, an overinflated evaluation. And when things are overvalued, people spend money. And now that it is leveling off to a place where it should be, well, they're going to have to tighten their belt. And the first thing to go when they tighten their belt is layoffs. And when people get laid off, they can't afford their mortgages. So just imagine, Jane and John bought a house last year. They worked for Meta and Amazon, making it up. They paid an all-time high with a really low interest rate. One of them loses their jobs. Well, they're going to have a hard time paying for that mortgage. And they are going to have a hard time because they don't have the savings that everyone says that we should have, 6-month savings, because they just liquidated all their savings because they paid $50,000 more on a house than they naturally would have. So what's going to happen to their house? Are they going to be another victim in the foreclosure? But this is going to happen all across the country. And we're going to see more and more and more. And sure, they're going to say we're still catching up. The media is going to tell us, well, this is all normal because we didn't have any evictions for the past year and a half, that we are playing catch up. But when you play catch up all at once, disaster can happen. All right, it is the Illusionary Truth Effect. You can believe what you hear on the media. You can believe what you hear on YouTube. None of us really know the future. But when the media all tells us one thing, and one thing only, you have to start to question it because it's only what they want you to believe. All right, folks, I am traveling again tomorrow. I am on my way to Idaho. Thank you so much. As always, I appreciate you. I really, really do. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. Be kind. Call someone. Tell them you love them. We will talk again, hopefully from somewhere in northern Idaho. And thanks again. Have a wonderful night.